We now know when and where President Trump will be meeting with North Korea's dictator for their historic summit. Just moments ago, President Trump announced that he will meet with Kim Jong-un in Singapore on June 12th. The details revealed hours after the president welcomed home 3 Americans freed from the Hermit Kingdom. The president and vice president, their wives, greeting the men after their plane touched down at Joint Base Andrews just before 3 a.m. Their arrival marks a huge diplomatic win for the administration, and the president says it shows the North Korean dictator is ready for change.
I think he did this because I really think he wants to do something and bring that country into the real world.
The president says the release also puts the U.S. on new footing, his words, as he prepares for the summit to address the North's nuclear program.
Proudest achievement will be, this is a part of it, but will be when we denuclearize that entire peninsula. This is what people have been waiting for a long time. Nobody thought we could be on this track in terms of speed. So I'm very honored to have helped the 3 folks. The true honor is going to be if we have a victory in getting rid of nuclear weapons.
All right, Caitlin Collins is at the White House. Caitlin, a very late night, early morning for everyone, but now this news coming out about a time and a place for the big meeting. What are you hearing there today?
Kate, it has been a whirlwind of a 24 hours here at the White House, along with the release of those Americans. And now we have an official time and an official location for that historic summit between the president and Kim Jong-un. Of course, the president confirming some CNN reporting from yesterday that the meeting will be held in Singapore, and the president giving us a date of June 12th, saying that it's going to be this highly anticipated meeting and that he hopes it is a very special moment for world peace. Of course, this does come, Kate, after the release of those 3 Americans from North Korea who were held, brought back with the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo yesterday. And though the president said he saw the release of those Americans as a gesture of goodwill on behalf of the North Koreans ahead of that meeting, he said it won't change the way he negotiates with the North Korean leader. He hopes something good can come of that meeting, but he did not say for sure that something good would come of that meeting. So a lot of hope, a lot of anticipation for this meeting. But Kate, it will be a historic meeting regardless of what happens on June 12th in Singapore. It is the first time a sitting American president and the leader of North Korea have sat down face to face. The president said he hopes that meeting can be something that he one day calls his proudest achievement, where he gets North Korea to give up their nuclear weapons. But that will be something that we wait and see for what happens on June 12th. Right now, we do know it will be June 12th, and we will be in Singapore, Kate.
All right, Caitlin, thank you so much. Let's discuss this breaking news right now. Joining me, Kelly Magsamen. She's a CNN national security analyst who served in the National Security Council under President Bush and Obama, and Bruce Klingler. He's a former CIA deputy division chief for Korea. Thank you both for being here. So, Kelly, Singapore, June 12th, location, does it matter?
Actually, I think Singapore is a perfect location. Singapore is a very close and trusted partner of the United States. It's seen as relatively neutral in the region, and they have very good security apparatus there, too. So that'll be good for both of the leaders, of course. So I actually think it's quite a good location and a solid choice.
And Bruce, what do you think about the timing of these things, right? You have the Americans coming home early this morning and the announcement then of the time and place connected.
Well, certainly the release of the Americans removes an impediment to what otherwise might have prevented a summit between the U.S. and North Korea, or certainly would have cast a dark cloud. So it's another gesture of goodwill by Kim Jong-un. It's really another in a rapid-fire series of foreign policy initiatives. So it removes the impediment, it sets a good tone, but most important is what will be on the agenda during that summit.
And Kelly, if you look at the calendar, it's like 4 weeks away. What needs to happen between now and then?
Well, a lot needs to happen. A lot goes into these presidential level summits. I suspect that right now the National Security Council staff is holding meetings with the State Department and the Defense Department and the intelligence community to develop the negotiating position, to develop the kinds of things we're going to try to pursue, as well as what we're prepared to offer as well to the North Koreans. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work going on right now. I also suspect there's an intense amount of outreach to our allies in the region, in particular Japan, which is quite nervous about the summit, and of course our allies, the South Koreans.
And Bruce, you talked about it being kind of the removal of an impediment to moving forward here, but that dramatic return of the three Americans early this morning, does their arrival, just their arrival home, do you think it marks a new day for the U.S. relationship with North Korea, as the president suggests?
Well, we've been down this path before. Of course, we're always concerned when any Americans are detained in North Korea, given the brutal treatment not only of Otto Warmbier, but some other Americans. But there were, I believe, 8 Americans released during the Obama presidency. The 2 of the 3 that were released today were arrested during President Trump's time in office. So it's usually an action taken by the North Korean security services, and then when it sort of percolates up to the leadership, they release the Americans when they either see as it's an impediment to improving relations, or they want to send it as a gesture of diplomatic outreach.
And Kelly, do you wonder why Kim Jong-un released the Americans now, not waiting for it to happen as part of a broader deal, as part of their conversation when they sit down in Singapore?
Well, I mean, Kim Jong-un has proven himself thus far to be very skillful, I think, at setting up the diplomacy ahead of the summit. I think this in part was to offer a gesture of goodwill, certainly, but I would be careful about reading too much into whether or not it signals his intent to really come to the table on denuclearization. So I would just caution, this is really raising the expectations ahead of the summit. The president himself is raising expectations on himself via this, but also the withdrawal from the Iran nuclear agreement.
And I actually am really interested in your take on that. What do you think, Bruce, from your perspective, how that plays into how pulling out of the Iran deal plays into any potential deal or impacts any potential deal with North Korea? Where do you land on this?
Well, certainly, as the U.S. has said, it's sending a signal that we're going to not accept an imperfect deal. One could certainly see from a North Korean point of view that it calls into question U.S. credibility. If the U.S. can pull out of one agreement, how can they sign an agreement with the U.S. on a North Korean nuclear deal? On the other hand, this was not a surprise. I think North Korea already factored that risk into its outreach to the U.S., its agreement for the summit. So I don't think it will have that big an impact, because North Korea certainly was expecting it.
But Kelly, do you think at the very least now, and maybe that's what you're saying, that any nuclear deal with North Korea must be measured against the Iran deal that the president hates so much? I mean, if that's the case, how high of a bar is there now for success?
I personally think the president has set a very high bar for success. I think a lot of people, especially in Congress, are going to be looking very closely at how he pursues these negotiations. And let's be honest, North Korea is a much tougher nut to crack than even Iran. They already have nuclear weapons, estimated around 20. So this is a much more difficult case for denuclearization than even Iran. So I think the president's withdrawal from the deal, his going out so publicly and talking about how it was such a lousy deal, has actually raised the bar on himself.
Bruce, I want to ask you about the president's words. At the same time that he's standing with these 3 Americans who were held by North Korea, the president also says that Kim Jong-un really was excellent to these 3 incredible people. Of course, everyone knows that this is a regime known for its brutal rule and to completely disregard human rights. What does it do to hear those words coming from the president when he's standing there with the Americans?
Right. Just to expand on the point Kelly made, is I think the president has set a very high bar. It's not only any agreement he makes has to be better than the Iran deal, but also the 8 previous agreements the international community had with North Korea, and the 10 UN resolutions and verification measures equal to arms control treaties with the Soviet Union. I think the president, on the one hand, was thanking or acknowledging Kim Jong-un's intervention to release the Americans, which is quite welcome. On the other hand, I think it sort of reflects the president's superlative way of talking, using a lot of adjectives when describing meetings or world leaders.
Which raises the stakes when these 2 leaders sit down face to face with each other. Great to see both of you. Thanks for walking through it with me. Appreciate it.